was the one I just mentioned, people process technology. So what you've got in the upper right is in the upper right, you've got People City, and each one of the buildings in People City are people things, people activities that we do in knowledge management. In the middle, you've got Process City and little villages and every one of those little bits that you can't read right now. Those are examples of knowledge management processes that we do as knowledge management practitioners. And then over here in the brown, we've got Technology City, and these are all the sort of different types for some specific technologies related enough to knowledge management. So people process technology cities on Knowledge Management Island. And then in updating Chris's map, what Chris had done is he had put countries right next to knowledge management, and each one of those countries were all of the sort of partners. There are so many different disciplines that knowledge management tries to work with. So we did the same thing. What we put was a change management island and tried to put a few little items of what knowledge managers might be aware of in change management. We put diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility island and some things knowledge management practitioners might do with DEI partners. We put organization development OD island with a whole bunch of OD things that KM and OD can do together. And then we've got down here, of course, a big island. Data management, information management, project management are all down here on this island, which with a bunch of you know, project management, data management, information management, partnerships with knowledge management. You might start to pick up on the bridges. So we built some bridges that said, so here's some activities that we do that we feel are literally a bridge between these two disciplines. And then the two different islands that I would call out for you, and then I'll go quiet here. The island at the top is called Purpose Island, and one of the big improvements or big bits of feedback we got was to put a big arrow right here in the upper left that says start here, just like the ISO standard says, like, don't do knowledge management for fun, don't do knowledge management because you were told to, do knowledge management for some business reason or for some organizational reason. So we've got one of the 82 bits of feedback is a start here arrow to say start with purpose and then work your way around all these islands. And then down here at the bottom, we've got measurement island, just because I don't know about you, but just constantly we're challenged and asked, how do you measure intangible knowledge flow? So there's a bunch of little villages and things that we do to measure. And I say we as in all of us, all collective knowledge management practitioners. So maybe the very last thing I'll mention, if you see this kind of, I don't know, tan, beige walking path is what it's supposed to look like. By the way, this entire map is meant to look like an amusement park. It's meant to be kind of fun and engaging and bring a smile to your face and maybe bring a little bit of controversy, things you agree with and disagree with, like spark a conversation. And whether you've been doing knowledge management since the 90s or you just joined knowledge management yesterday, like this is meant to spark those conversations. So this walking path, it was actually an original miss from the graphic designer, but this walking path represents ISO 30401. So it's meant to be a path that kind of brings together purpose, people, process, and technology of KM, and measurement of KM. I think that better be where I stop for now, time-wise. Annie, Moria, is that what I was supposed to talk about or something else?
No, you were
There's
supposed to
no
cover the
right and
map.
wrong.
Okay, good.
Uh, I just want to point out that tomorrow there's a new project starting, speaking about the KM landscape and trying to take this even another step further. One of the big ideas is that, oh, here we have Andrew.
And
He can
Andrew's
say a
here,
word.
yeah.
I don't know if it's still open for registration, but I think that one of the new understandings of our community is the inclusiveness. It's not this definition or that definition. It's not this answer or that answer. When we have a landscape, it has different truths, different understandings, different perspectives. But I'll stop here and let's talk.
Yeah, John, what is the value that you think the map will bring to those who are KMers and non-KMers for knowledge management?
I'm hoping sparking conversation and a big, huge thing. I'm glad you know more. You mentioned Andrew. Andrew and I have been working on this. So exactly what Andrew and I are doing. We've Andrew, what have we spent 4, 6, 8 hours working on this together? It sparks beautiful conversations of like, why did you choose people process technology instead of data, information, knowledge, wisdom? What caused that? And islands, islands feel like silos to me. Why didn't you have everything connected as opposed to separated by these rivers? But oh wait, rivers have flow to them. We should probably put some waterfalls and we should show how the water is moving and it sparks these conversations. And my favorite is when you show this to people and they look at this and they've been doing knowledge management since the late 90s when it all got created and they go, I've never heard of this. What is that? Tell me more about this one little dot on the map. I've been doing KM for 30 years and never heard of that. That's a beautiful moment. Or slightly ashamedly and embarrassing to me, doing this thing for decades, somebody will look at the map and go, I can't believe you forgot positive deviance, which is a fact. It's not on here. And they're like, positive deviance has been a thing in KM for 30 years and it's not on here. That's a big miss. How can you not? So like, it's this both of like, learning, discussing, developing, realizing that there's so much more we could do. Two of the other big things that got added to this map, thanks to the feedback, Innovation Island was not here. We've now created Innovation Island. The other one that wasn't here was Human Resources Learning and Development Island. And that one was a highly debated one, but we have decided to add it in the lower left corner of the map. So
I love
the conversation.
the outcome. And I'm sure it was a fun session. It's really nice to see the map. I wonder if there's a island or neighborhood or place for KM strategy or KM policy. Because we couldn't read all the
sorry, that's just because it's too small right now. But yes, the bridge between Purpose Island and Knowledge Management Island, the title of the bridge is the KM Strategy Bridge.
Oh, nice.
And the metaphor there is like strategy is what brings the purpose and the discipline like to life.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion that comes out of it with planning, and that's wonderful. Very nice.
I would suggest that the word metaphor is very important here, because we could discuss tables and terms. However, when we have visualization and we have metaphors, these are two different things that are interconnecting. That's probably what part of the thing that sparks our discussions, ideas, inspiration, and brings us to new understandings.
Also, it looks as if, I'm looking at it and thinking, because you use the terms for KM, and I don't believe there's been anything consistent and standard. And I think there are a lot of variations of different things. And like you said, people learn and they actually see different areas, or they see things that are missing. Do you think this would be a great tool to bring about consistency and a common business language amongst KMers when they're talking within KM?
Yeah, could bring consistency, or at least could bring the conversations around, oh, that's interesting. I look at KM differently. Yeah, could.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments?
I have a quick comment. John, to borrow from librarianship, there's a guy named David Lankus who created something called the Atlas of New Librarianship. You might want to take a look at that, because it might just give you some other ideas that you could, it's just a kind of a something to check against, because there's so much overlap between those two fields that it just might spark some ideas. And that, Annie, what you said about language and how terminology is it's not standardized, that's what made me think of that. And that's true for librarianship and KM. So you might take a look at that, John. Thanks.
Thanks. Will do.
Okay.
John, this is Liz McLean, and I have already talked to you about how I feel when I see Brown in librarianship, and I would just like to echo Kendra's a recommendation that whomever's building this landscape does take a look. There's a giant map, knowledge map, concept map from the new Atlas of New Librarianship that has very clear indicators, according to this author, of how librarianship is in the desert.
Nice. Thanks.
Checking the chat to see if there's any questions in the chat.
Can you share the enthusiasm? What happened in the room when people, it was on the walls? What happened there? People were silent at the beginning and then they started speaking slowly and then, wow. Can you share with us the atmosphere, the journey?
Yeah, Annie and Liz, help me out.
Mhm.
So I had 4 physical copies of the map and taped them up on the walls and then put sticky notes like on chairs and tried to put a few pens around too. And yeah, I would say pretty much instantly people were physically standing in semicircles around the 4 corners of the room and almost instantly putting up sticky notes. I also did the thing where like I already had some feedback from Chris and others, and so I pre-wrote some sticky notes and put them up so so like it encouraged like we really are looking for feedback. Yeah, I don't know, Annie,
Very
Liz, what did you
collaborative
notice in the
session.
room?
People were buzzing, people were talking, people were engaged. I found it to be really, really good. You got a lot of different perspectives. As John said, he captured how many feedback measures? What, 80 something or 90 something?
82.
82. So people were curious and some people found it very, very engaging, and some people had, things that they would have corrected on it. But the majority of the people thought it was really a great idea, especially for, like Sir John said, striking up conversation and communicating.
It was lively, and it was so wonderful to be together in person and have conversations around people who made great observations and shared experiences that I would never have experienced without that powerful conversation and knowledge sharing. It was very energetic and so many fascinating concepts that we probably would have wanted to talk about all afternoon.
Okay. John, we want to thank you for that sharing of your story. So let's give John a great clap with whatever. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And again, John is available, so you can always reach out to him, if you want to give him any other additional comments, or, even get a copy of the map. Or can they get a copy of the map, John?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get it updated and posted. And Moria, I'll look for your help too to sort of like get it out to the world, and with SIKM, with Henley, with APQC. I'll try and like share it out. And it's meant to be a collective, what do they call it? Creative Commons, like out there in the world for everybody to edit and use.
Okay.
I think that we are a wonderful role model for really everyone here in the community saying we're doing it. Maybe I'm leading it, but it's all of it's the process of our community. Thank you so much, John, for role modeling this. And whenever you have it ready, just send it to me and I'll already make a lot of noise.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
I wanted
Thanks,
to add
Jim.
one thought in this. Now when you can, when a map like this is made out, a hard copy print and shown to management, it'll spark a lot of questions as to why are we on this path, why not on this path, and so it'll actually help the KMers to, sort of get the strategy endorsed by the management, so also they can get ideas. Because what happens unless there is a bigger picture or other thoughts that come in, you are normally focused a lot on, let's do it's a proven path. But then there would be questions asked, okay, why not this? Why did we look at this? Why not this? These are the options available. So I think this is a very good, I love things which are visual because then that sparks conversations. So I really appreciate what has been done.
Thank you.
And I see a lot of
Great
possibilities.
one to end on. That was great. So now we're going to move over to our next speaker, which is Kendra Albright. And Kendra's going to introduce herself and then provide her story.
Great. Let me share my screen here and then we'll get started. So let's see if I can get this to work. Maybe. Aha. Okay, so I'm Kendra Albright, and I am the Goodyear Endowed Professor in Knowledge Management at Kent State University. And for those of you who don't know where Kent State is, I brought a map. I thought you might like to see where it is. Most people go, well, where's Kent? And it's like, it's in Kent, Ohio, which is just slightly, if you can see my cursor, slightly to the east of Akron. So just to give you a point of reference, here's Chicago. So we are, as the crow flies, we're very close to Detroit and about 45 minutes from Cleveland, Ohio. And if you haven't ever been there, I can really recommend it. There's lots of cool things to see. There's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. There's a wonderful science museum. It's a very beautiful part of the country, and it's green. It's got ski resorts in the winter. It's very cool. And I mean that literally, it's cool. So, but I don't actually live there because our classes are all online. So I'm readjusting my computer here. I live in the place where you see these mountains behind me. I'm actually to the south in East Tennessee. So that's where I grew up, and I came home, and that's where I'm living now. But I am here today to talk to you about knowledge management jobs. I wanted to just go through a little bit of background here. I've been teaching in higher education for about almost 30 years. And before that, I did a lot of professional practice and consulting in, you would call probably librarianship in those days, which would really classify now as knowledge management. I did a lot of contracting with the US government in different areas, working a lot with the Department of Energy to build the Energy Science and Technology database way back when, where we had to take 2 years to add a new human genome to the thesaurus. It had to go through a number of approvals. So I've been around knowledge and information for most of my career, for all of my career actually. And my early research was spent looking at the relationship between information and behavior change in HIV/AIDS behavior in Uganda. Uganda was one of the countries that was probably the most successful country at reversing the prevalence of HIV before it had antiretrovirals. And we wanted to know how they did that. And I could spend a whole nother hour talking about that. I'm not going to talk about that today, but that was an interesting process to look at the way that knowledge flows in the Ugandan culture and how they were able to be so successful at changing their behavior. So I teach in the area of health informatics and knowledge management, and occasionally still librarianship. And there's a lot of overlap between these things, as you guys probably know. But what that does is that leads me to think about, which I do a lot, what is it that we need to do to prepare students to become knowledge managers? There's basically 3 programs in the United States that have KM programs at the master's degree level in the United States. They are George Mason University. John teaches there. Annie, you teach there sometimes, I think. And we have Columbia University in New York, and then Kent State over in Ohio. So it's always been interesting to me to know, what is it that we need to know to help prepare students for careers in KM? Well, one of the things we need to know is, what are the jobs? What kinds of things do they do? So we wanted to look at what the jobs really look like. I haven't been able to find a lot of studies that show detailed information about what KM jobs are. So our study was designed to look at the number and characteristics of the KM jobs in the US. And so I'm just going to talk about that process, how we went through this study, which is still ongoing. This will be a longitudinal study. And so right now we've collected 500 job advertisements. Let me close that a little bit. From LinkedIn over 15 months. We started in September 23. And we have just, the data that I'm presenting today went through December of 2024. So we were very careful we were very pure in our search, looking at knowledge management or knowledge manager as phrases in LinkedIn to find very narrowly focused descriptions for knowledge management or knowledge manager. And in that period of time, we found 500 jobs. And then when we removed the duplicates, oddly enough, there weren't that many. And so we came up with 488 jobs total. In the process of my giving you the results, you may see that it was like in some places it was 487 jobs or whatever. And that's because sometimes there was missing data for some of the characteristics that we were looking for. So that is what we decided to do, is to identify what characteristics we found in those job ads, and then to take all of that data and extract it and put it into an Excel spreadsheet so that we could then analyze it. I'm not presenting any kind of inferential, generalizable statistics this morning. That's the next step. Right now, I'm just giving you, this is a work in progress. I'm just giving you the qualitative data, how many things in each category that we've found to date. So here we go. All right, so in terms of jobs, these are the top 10 job titles and the percentages of all the job ads that were in each of those categories. So you can see there's a wide range here. We have, 35% of those just advertised for literally KM. That was what their advertisements were. But one of the things I wanted to do is to show you just the range of job titles, which you can't even see here because there's like so many of these are one unique title specific to that organization. But 35% said that they were KM jobs. And then the next largest category was senior KM, and then SharePoint KM, and then KM for mid, meaning mid entry level, mid senior level, just whatever, middle career, and then enterprise KM, HR KM, et cetera. So you can see down the list there. And there are, I've got a list of all of those titles, and we'll be happy to make any of that available for those of you who want to see them. Also, in terms of the location of KM jobs in the US, we took a look here, and you can see that the majority of those jobs are in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. and Maryland. So that's not a surprise there, but it gives you a sense of where the jobs are. I was surprised there were 12 KM jobs in Hawaii, if anybody wants to go to Hawaii. So there were jobs in all but 15 states. So you can see we've got, all of this area of the country does not have KM jobs. A lot of the South does not have KM jobs, or the Southwest of the South, the western part of the South. But Guam also, as a US territory, did have one KM job posted as well. So I thought this would be interesting to show you where the jobs are. The darker the color, the more the jobs. So Texas, of course, California, Washington State, New York, Illinois, Georgia, of course, because of Atlanta, Florida, and some in Alabama. And then the rest are a little bit lighter. All right, so this is a total of the industries. So this is a hard one to grasp because of the same thing. It has a lot of different industries that are represented. But we did a little bit of an analysis here, so you can see IT services and consulting showed up as number 1, defense and space manufacturing, followed by staffing and recruiting. A lot of these didn't list what industry they were in. IT was again a separate category, but you can see that it was a large one. And actually, if you combine the first IT services and IT consulting and IT, that probably makes up the bulk of the industries that are represented in these job advertisements. So I just wanted to show you what we did here. This is the NAICS codes, which are the North American Industrial Classification System. And I rolled these jobs up into those industries just to give a sense of the trends. So you can see the numbers of the jobs in each of the NAICS larger codes. So for example, professional, scientific, and technical services, that includes IT and lawyers. And when I rolled those up, you can see the large percentage there is over half that is explained by that category. It's 230, followed by primary metal manufacturing, then administrative and support and waste management and remediation services, etc. So what I did was all of these jobs that were advertised we could have an industry classification for them using NAICS. But NAICS is organized hierarchically. So the fewer the numbers, the larger the category. And so it's hierarchical. So lawyers would be one subset of 54, which might be something else. So for example, the one here for hotels and motels, which is down at the bottom, 721110 in the middle down here, hotels and motels, it doesn't roll up into anything. It's its own number. And so that couldn't really be collapsed. So while these categories are really more limited in their description, you can at least get a general idea of the types of industries that are represented in these job ads at this higher level, so you can see the trends. Okay, qualifications. Very interesting, qualifications. This is just the top 13 responses out of the total of the responses that listed this, which was 78 of the 488 jobs. Now, this isn't all of them. Again, this is just the top. It's interesting that when you look at this, you see very few advanced degrees. Most of them require a bachelor's degree, but lots of experience. So that's going to require some additional digging out to understand better what is that experience that they're looking for. You can see it's all over the place: project management, construction and business operations, marketing and business development. Some of these require a secret clearance, and so on. So this is an area that I think we really need to look at more deeply. Because if you can imagine, somebody with a bachelor's degree in a BA and 5 years of experience is going to have some very different qualifications than someone with a BS degree. So BS being science, BA being arts, liberal arts is typically very different approaches. So that's why this some of these are just bachelor's degree, but this one here, oops, sorry, go back. I'm not doing that very well. Let's do that again. So this one right here is the BS, just the BS. And so that's a Bachelor of Science, which may be just fine by itself that they have that scientific experience or education. So there's qualifications. And I wanted to show you this slide. It looks like KM pays pretty well in general, but out of these 488 jobs, only, 287 of them did not provide that information. Not surprising. I was actually more surprised that there were so many that did post the range. The problem with this data is because the ranges overlap so much, it's very difficult to establish any kind of statements or understanding of what's really happening with these salaries. This is going to require a different approach to get better ideas about what the salaries are. That would require a survey or interviews with people, which is part of the next steps that we'll be taking. But so, for example, you've got one here that's 98 to 125,000, and the next one is 85 to 105,000. So you can't really compare those two. There's so much overlap between them. But I can say that if you look at the bottom of the range for all these top 12 responses is 60,000, and the top of the range is $210,100. So, in general, you've got a lot of ranges here, but 60,000 to 210,000 is not bad salaries for people in KM. However, it would be interesting, and we will be doing this, is to run a correlation and see what exists between the relationship that exists between salaries and the qualifications for these jobs, among other things. So our next steps are to run, like I said, these correlations, location and salaries, qualifications and industries, and so on. We want to also expand our data sources for additional jobs. So that might include, Indeed has KM jobs. Sometimes SICM has additional job postings. If you know of a resource, I'd be happy to hear about that. Also, we want to analyze and expand the job titles. If we can dig into these job titles a little bit more and the qualifications, we might be able to get more additional detail. My sense of this is because we were very narrow in our search, and because KM is not a standard term, it's that there are maybe a lot more KM jobs than this study is revealing. That's my suspicion, but that's not proven at this point. We also want to collapse some of the data into these broader categories to give a bigger picture, like job titles, qualifications, levels of experience, etc. And then we want to hopefully publish the results and continue expanding the search to not only more job titles, more qualifications, etc., but also to expand our geographic boundaries to other countries. So that's the next step, and that's it. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
There were a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
One kind of question that CKO was missing, and you just said the different titles because I think you used KM, but can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we didn't use Chief Knowledge Officer. We just used to start with Knowledge Manager or Knowledge Management. This was a very pure search just to start. And so in 15 months, we got 500 jobs using that just in LinkedIn. So we did not use Chief Knowledge Officer to start with. We wanted to keep it very, very pure. Yeah.
And then Rachel asked, was the relationship to Global Knowledge Manager? Is there any relationship?
Global Knowledge Manager, I think, showed up in some of the titles. I don't have that list right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that was in there as well, because it would have picked up Knowledge Manager. So global would have been an additional word in that title, but we should have gotten that. That should have been included. Yep. But we didn't specifically look for global.
Okay, and then I had one that I didn't put out there, but I noticed, like you said, the DMV was kind of the hub area where a lot of them showed up at. And I also, in that area, you have a lot of government. So was there any thought to go into how many of these were within the government, especially since the government agencies at one point mandated that there be a CKO in each of the agencies?
Yeah, I think that's going to show up in the data, because what we found was when we're looking at the more minutia of the NAICS codes, we saw a lot of defense and aerospace engineering. And my guess is those are going to correlate heavily with the geographic location of Northern Virginia and DC area, Maryland. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm trying to see. I think that there's another question from Eli. Do you know of any initiative to do the same in Europe?
I don't know that. I don't know that. Now, I know that Nick Milton collects data through an annual survey that has some of the things like the total number of knowledge managers in the world. And Nick's been very generous with allowing me to use some of his data in other studies. So I know he does do that. And we would like to, we as in my research team would like to expand this globally, because we have a global project on knowledge management education. And so the two of them go very well together to help us understand what it is that educators need to be doing to prepare knowledge managers. So right now that research team is doing interviews, and I think they're doing interviews in about 30 plus countries to find out what knowledge managers do and how they got their education in those countries. And so that gives us an opportunity to create and to build a greater network to understand what it is that knowledge managers do to help us prepare for education. So yeah, it's kind of going on, and that could lead into that. But right now we're not doing that. We're not doing that yet. And I don't know. I suspect there are other initiatives going on. It would be good to know what they are, but I haven't been looking for them yet. Yep.
Okay.
One thing at a time.
Okay, I'm pushing over to Ivette. She's got her hand up.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, at least here. Kendra, I think what you did is absolutely amazing. I think it's very much needed, and it should be built on in every continent. I see other layers as well, because especially when I talk with my African friends in knowledge management, they always start the interview with, I didn't realize for a while that I actually have been doing knowledge management, but they were titled as communication experts or stakeholder management experts or God knows what experts, like, in learning and development, etc., etc. So I'm really, I find this really interesting, and I think that it would be amazing if you publish this on LinkedIn, because then many people in other continents could join. There are fantastic data in your presentation. And maybe one thing is that APQC is actually running a survey of knowledge managers in organization, and they are asking similar questions. What is your education level, etc., etc. We'll put the link into the chat. If you can't access it because of SharePoint or whatever, I will put also the contact point, Linda. Maybe we can also help them to have a bigger turnout for this. But thanks again, Kendra, and I really loved your presentation.
Thank you so much, Yvette. And I was going to tell you that we have Linda Brasiak, if I say her name correctly, from APQC, is working with us on the global KM education project. So, but that doesn't mean that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing for me or for them. So this is good to know. And I'm so grateful that you said that, so that I can mention that to Linda and see if we can't pull some of that stuff together. Same with Nick, is, he does the annual survey, and APQC is doing a survey, and it's like, why don't we all work together and get these questions and stop reinventing the wheel, so let's work together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually Linda Brasiak who sent this survey around. So yeah, I'm glad I connect you with the US.
It's a small world. We travel in a small pack.
But I would love to see something like that in Europe as well. So kudos.
Yvette, where are you? Where are you?
I'm in the Netherlands.
I'm in the Netherlands. Okay, great. Thanks. I'll reach out to you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, this is just to say thank you. This is all excellent to hear, and it's just great content for the landscape perspectives. Having an idea of who is actually reaching out and using that language. You are right. We need to be sort of open and flexible, that people might not actually call it a knowledge management function, but they are performing. So, for instance, they could be recruiting a librarian, and all, for what we know, it could basically just be core knowledge management. But I really like the industry's perspectives. It also allows us to examine from experience, do we have enough perspectives? Are we taking, the landscape we're going to be looking at is a little bit like the hill you have behind you, Kendra. We can have many different people standing on different hills looking at the sun, and they will see slightly different things. And, it's like John's map, do we have enough islands, the different perspectives? So your research is massively timely, and even just one of the view graphs that you've showed us, I think would give everybody a really lovely insight to say, are we really asking the right questions? And one of the goals is to break convention. So it allows us to say, yes, you looked from a knowledge management perspective, but the answer you got was the names of the industries. Are we now too narrow-minded or monoculture, such that we aren't including these other areas? And if I use Dave Snowden's concept, it's, we don't always need to look at the large numbers, the high hits. Some of the hits at ones or twos are important because they might be indicating a shift. And I think that's really, the KM landscape really is like taking a picture. It's not judging, it's simply saying this is the way things are. And as Maria said earlier on, we're really trying to just acknowledge what's out there And then academics like yourself in years to come can look at the holes and look at the complexities or the contradictions or whatever. And also technology consultancies or whomever can, you know, go and try and fill in the gaps or resolve it. And then maybe reflect in 5 years' time and do it again, do it all again, you know. So anyway, I thought it was great. Thank you. Very, very
Thank you, Andrew. That's very helpful. And I had actually, when John was speaking, I wrote down, hey, we could map the job industry and industry stuff to the islands. It would be so great to do that,
Totally.
you know.
Totally.
Each
Yeah.
informs the other, you know. So that's great,
Yeah.
Andrew. Thank you for making that observation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great idea. I'm going to read a statement that was out here. I am sure, from Jonathan, I am sure there would be a strong interest in the non-English speaking areas such as Brazil, Germany, Italy, which have active KM communities. So that's something to think about. And then I'm going to transfer it over to Yvette again.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really agree with what Andrew is saying and Kendra is saying, because I was thinking as well how this map that is not even ready yet could be further repurposed. And one of the questions that I got from management lots of times is, who are your internal stakeholders? So I think when we have a map, we can actually show, hey, we are in touch with learning and development, not stepping on their toes, but we are in touch with them, with IT. And just building on what Kendra and Andrew said as well, that we could also say to the future generations, okay, if you want to work with this part of the map, this is the education that you would need to do. So I don't know, this is just, I think, a great start of something amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again for the floor.
Okay, Andrew.
I just had I wanted to give a shout out to Annie, actually, because Edwin told me that a few years ago, Annie created a working group. And one thing they did was they looked at the KM internal organizational or process disciplines, if you like, so sub-disciplines, and they mapped them to the same disciplines within the organization. So if we're doing knowledge transfer, they said this is HR, or other areas, you know, communication. And I think that internal map is also very valuable. And that's really what this exercise, this KM landscape is about, is there's so many good nuggets out there. Let's try to get a single activity so that you can see them all, but then you allow you are the owner of putting them in the right place. That's really the overall concept. Yes, we'll try to group them together. So different, anyway, I don't want to go on more, but Annie, I really just wanted to give you a shout because Edwin showed me that and I kind of, this is amazing. But I think maybe one of the challenges as knowledge management is we don't have a publication authority, not at the community level or not at the ecosystem level. And for sure, we don't have a single or common platform. And that's something else we're going to try and address through this KM landscape.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. I didn't toot my own horn, but I was thinking about that, that I had done that. So I appreciate it. Thais.
Kendra and John, please send me your presentation so we can share them later on our resources with everyone.
Yep.
We spoke about a shared platform, so
Great.
got my mind.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, Kendra, just a big shout out just to thank you as well. We've been trying to also map the professionals in Brazil for a few years now, and we realized also age-wise that we had senior professions, the professions that were changing or turning into KM because they were seniors, because they were the specialists in the room, right? And then it sparkled our curiosity and to discuss about what is bringing the younger generation into KM as well. And it goes into the jobs, but the future jobs and new opportunities, and connecting here to what you guys already put out on the floor. I think we have to watch out for the signs that are bringing the future jobs as well for the coming generations, because they will be also the future of the of KM. And yeah, I think we heard in Brazil before that many people are doing KM and their jobs don't call KM, their titles don't call KM officially. So in our research, what we did is like, is your work directly related to KM? They would answer yes or no. And we then ask them, what's the title of your official title then? And then we figured out most of the time they didn't call KM. And then I think it's also nice we can share the data we have here as well.
Okay, what a great.
Can I
Go
just
ahead, Kendra.
Thais, it's very interesting. Your point is very well taken, because it makes me think that when I start looking at the kinds of industries and the kinds of levels of people who are coming into KM, that it gives us an opportunity to know that if we're spending, the bulk of our time in IT and defense and aerospace, and those may have some overlap, very much so, but if that's what we're doing, then who's doing the rest of the professions? And that opens doors for us to do some education and some marketing and that sort of stuff, so that we can continue to grow the KM field. And so people will start to recognize it better. I think that's one of the things that I've found the most surprising in the United States, is that KM is not well understood at all. I taught at University of Sheffield for 3 years, and I can say that when I taught KM at Sheffield, that people had a much better understanding, and they don't, it's a cultural thing too as well. In the US, it's like everybody is so siloed. They say, oh, well, that's business. That belongs in the business school, or that's business people. They do that, and they don't understand that KM is kind of a mixture of things. It's an interdisciplinary field. So we have opportunities here. And Thais, I was also going to tell you, do you know Francisco Paletta? He's at University of Sao Paulo. He's working with us on global KM education. He wrote an article for a special issue we did in Library Trends on global KM education. So he's somebody you might want to reach out to, but I'll send you that stuff. So
okay. This is great. Now, and look, Thais, you finish up the previous one, and now we get ready to come to you for the last one. So we're going to move over now to our last speaker, which is Thais Colicchio, and I'm going to pass the ball to you to move forward.
Thanks also for the invitation in here. I'm representing SBGC, which is our association, our local association here, the Brazilian Association of Knowledge Management, together with Julia. She's also here in the call with us, and she's constantly a presence and a face that you've seen before. So if I might, I'll just share my full screen with you, and I'll dive into your presentation so that you guys can see the topics we are coming. Just let me know if you can already see my full screen presentation.
Yes.
Yes, great, thanks. So let's jump into a few topics to share with you a bit about as well. So for most of you, if you haven't met before as your first contact, I will present a bit of SBGC, our association. Also a bit of the highlights of the KM week, as Moria invited us to share the stories and the narratives, and how was it locally here in the Brazil, the KM week in Brazil. And together with Julia and with our team, we have also our research about the KM that we call the Brazilian KM Panorama, that research both the professionals and the organizations. How is the KM under organizations in Brazil-wide, right? A national panorama for us. And we had just published the results in the Power BI report. So also firsthand for you guys, Julia did a great job translating it all. So with that on, I also want to thank our team. So together with Julia and Mariana, that she's the coordinator of the project as well. We've been working on the KM Panorama for a few years, and it is a public research that we just published online on the official website of SBGC. I think just to share our profiles, and also for some of you is the first time we're contacting, but I've been in the KM world 2022 and 2023, first time in person in Washington. So it was also a great opportunity to meet other colleagues from our industry as well. But I'm a researcher at the university, and I've been researching collaboration and knowledge management, especially knowledge sharing. and I brought the research in the KM World last year, but I'm also the manager and the coordinator for Impact Business Ecosystem. So it's lovely for me to hear all my colleagues from KM making it broader in the look of ecosystems and innovation and so on. So I have a bit of overlap with what I do for work and for research as well in here. So SBGC, it's actually our association. So it's the Knowledge Management Brazilian Society. So if you hear me saying SBGC, it's our KM association for the Brazilians. It's here for over 2 decades already, working with both the professionals and the organizations. I think the big takeouts when we talk about being a member, even as a volunteer for SBGC, is that we are lucky to embed with their experience of 21 years, senior professionals as well, but we share our know-how. We share our know-how also doing projects together, consultants and experience just like research like we're doing with the Panorama. And for the main activities as a member, I'll just do a double click on the activities. The same way we have the KM World globally. SBGC is hosting the KM Brazil LATAM. So it's a LATAM KM conference annually. So for 19 years now, we're hosting the 20th edition this year. So we also walk the talk and we have a community of praxis. So we do share insights with our community of praxis as well. That's our main study cases and the references. I think we have some companies in Brazil or organizations in Brazil that they are now our references when it comes to KM. And we have a training program for both professionals and certifications so that we can certify KM professionals as well. And along our journey, we have collected a lot of content, as you might imagine. So we have online education, both published sessions and contents for sharing. Yeah. Let me dive in a bit of the highlights of how was it the KM week, and Julia has a big part of it as Mariana as well, organizing a lot of content on the KM week 2024. We had 10 sessions. They are, as Maria said, all of them were online, but it is good and a good position to having the sessions online. But as we have in Brazil, our diversity of professionals and teams is what it was expressed at the KM week. So you can imagine we're discussing the professionals, the KMers in one side, but we also discussing how mature KM is and how is it connecting to innovation and gamification and all these things. We can see that in Brazil and within our association, we have a range of sectors or industries that are also represented. So every time we get to exchange, and that's something I can bring from a personal experience as well, we are exchanging with professionals from different backgrounds. So we have from healthcare section in here, even the automotive companies in there, social projects, and we all gathering in our group. So that's lovely to exchange. Also from my perspective as a scientific research in here. So it brothers are experienced lots of faces. So I think it's also about the smiles and what we bring to the table. So also a shout out to thanks all the co-hosts because they were the ones presenting content, right? And just for you to see a bit, like this was an introduction session about knowledge management in general with Elisandra. She's now the current president of the association in this. She just started her role in January this year. Yeah. And just a bit of the numbers. So we had the overall viewers from our sessions. We had presented the Brazilian KM Panorama also during the KM week. So we have also recorded for people to watch out later, all the content, right? But what I wanted to take my time and to share a bit of the insights with you, it's how are we running the KM Panorama, our research. So it's a longitudinal research we've been doing since 2018. We have a few main goals when we're reaching out for this specific research. We want to know how is working the knowledge management under organizations and how hard or how challenging it is for us as like an umbrella association to try mapping what's the evolution of KM on organizations or in their maturity level, for example. So we're mapping the praxis, we're analyzing, is the KM now impacting more and more the results of the organizations, and what are the trends and the challenges that our colleagues and KMers are bringing to the table, presenting to us every year. So I wanted to share, because I think in here we have a good room for sharing it. What is the timeline of our research? So it started in 2018, and that's when, as you know, ICBGC has a framework for governance of KM as well. So in 2018, they were doing an assessment of organizations. So that was the first time. It's not involved, but we have the results for them published in 2018 as an assessment for organizations. So 2020, it sparkled the curiosity of how about the professionals? So a bit to the Kendra in here, we had the side of the organizations, but we wanted to investigate the professionals of KM as well. So we had a combined form that would be asking, hey, if you're a KM professional, you would describe your profile, and then you would go into and describe KM at the organization you're working at. And we published results in 2020 on our reports. For the next year, so 2021, 2022, we had a very low, and I can openly say it in here, rate of response. We are reaching out to our colleagues and they were saying, we just answered the research last year, nothing changed, or we didn't have major changes. So they didn't answer it anymore because they didn't feel like they had to answer once again. So we're now doing the research like biannual. We collect the data in 1 year, we analyze the next year, and we published the results in 2020. And we also split into 2 different forms. So we're now evaluating the professionals of KM with 1 form, and we are evaluating their organizations with another one, maybe to add on to be easier. And that was a big dream of ours to then, if we could add on a more intensive report, like sharing the raw data and full data with our colleagues and with the market. So what we did is now we have a directory of professionals. That's where they can upload constantly their profiles. So like a directory page online as a community. So it means that we don't have to send out forms. People can at any time just upload their profiles, answer their information, and we're gathering that on our data. And we also have the Power BI as a great work by Julia as well. In our teams, we are now publishing all data on our Power BI. In the Power BI, the mini is that we are collecting data every 2 years, and we'll upload constantly on the same BI. Quick overview for you guys just to see our directory of professionals in Portuguese still, but yeah, we have it published, and we can also add tags for people if they are certified professionals, if they are members of our association, and if they are members of our board, for example, or consultants and so on, like senior consultants. So it's important for us. And I'll dive into the panorama with our Power BI so you guys can get a first-hand overview on it. Yeah. What did we do this edition? So we had 47 organizations total that were represented, and we had 79 respondents on our. So that's the reach out of our research. And just for you to know, we have it published for Brazilian organizations, right? So it's not a worldwide research, not yet. Even though our KM, it's LATAM, the panorama, it's being following up the evolutions with Brazilian companies, organizations, and professionals in here. A bit of the respondents' profile, if I might. I think we have an overview of what are the profiles, and it is a self-declared information both for the participants and for the organizations, right? So we have analysts working directly, and we ask them in here, is your role directed related to KM? And then we have 70 respondents saying yes. And as you might wondering, we didn't exclude any of the data we received because at the Power BI, if anyone wants to filter only the respondents that have directly role in KM, they can filter it out. So once we have the BI, we decided we're empowering the users and they are filtering the information as they feel like. We also wondering if in their organizations, do you have any specific team or at least one professional that is dedicated or full dedicated to KM? And we had expressive answers in here as well, that most of them will have it, but still there's some organizations that they don't have a full role or job dedicated to KM. And we wanted to understand for the organizations, how do they declare themselves and as a professional? So it's their perspectives watching into their organizations. What's the maturity level of your organizations? And in here, I have to have a disclaimer, because if you see, we have 79 respondents total, and we have 55 different ranges of answers for the maturity level. That does mean that in one same company, and we have some companies that are national, so they're broad spread into a country like Brazil. In the same company, two professionals would rank or named their organization into different maturity levels. So that's, for us, that's important to see. And we didn't deleted any of the answers. We consider all of the respondents' answer as valid, right? So if someone is saying, I work in a advanced stage in KM organization, and their colleagues from another unit, for example, would say, well, you're in the initial state, we'll take both statements as a truth respondents, right? And again, also just to share, we have in Brazil, we are reaching out specific to those organizations in which we know they have high levels of maturities, so that we make sure that they are here answering as also role models and references. So that's what I want to take you guys through a few of the numbers. If we filter out just the advanced maturity organizations in here, we have 11 organizations that will take them as our indicators in here, or the respondents and their answers are the indicators of how is it KM working on this, or working on this high maturity organizations. So we know they describe, how do you describe if you're describing the whole organization or some specific unity or department, for example, so we know how they are replying for the organization as well. In those specific, they all have dedicated teams, even if it's one professional, or dedicated teams to KM. And we had one organization that didn't answer, so they do have professions in there. And we try hanging in here, what's the range of the size of their teams or people engaged directly with KM. And then you will see there's a wide range of how KM is organized on their organization. So we even had one company saying they are reaching out to 99 professionals dedicated to KM. So that's a good benchmark for us to say, but it could be that this person is answering around who is engaged by KM, not directly managing KM in this case, right? Also, some things that are quite it sparkles conversations as for the map as well for our research. If we always try to map if the organization have formal efforts or formal policies and strategy into KM once they are high, if they are like high matured. And for those organizations we map as high matured organizations, they all have a strong agreement of a statement or a formal statement or a strategy or policy. And they also have programs and action in place. So we can see as well, most of them do have. The ones that don't are implementing. And we have one organization answer that they didn't have a formal program. And another insight in here is like, who's KM or KM effort engaging when we talk about the multiple stakeholders they could be engaging with KM. So 100% of the 17 of them are saying employees, of course, all the indoors or all our teams are being engaged. They are saying they are engaging high-level managers, for example. And it was a surprise for us to see they are also engaging with outsiders. So clients, commercial partners, suppliers have been engaging as well in the efforts. So for the organizations that are high maturity levels, it's nice to see that they are engaging also outside knowledge or the outside of their frontiers as well, right? So it was interesting for us to see. And just quick deepening of, well, what is the KM and descriptions? And I think it's good for you guys to have an overview on how is it describing on our Power BI, so that later on you can also navigate and check and navigate it as a user. And deepening on this data, Julia did translate it all to English, so it's great to have both versions now, Portuguese and English for you guys. But we did ask organizations, hey guys, have you already mapped and classified what's critical or most relevant of the knowledge you have? And for the high maturity, most of them, yes, they did have it organized. It's starting point, right, for the KM process and for the strategy as well. And we asked them currently, so if we take a picture of your organization, what's critical in KM processes that you are addressing right now? And we can see that they are preventing losses and storing and recording what's knowledge. So it's one end of knowledge management. And there are a few of them are already reaching out into disseminating, sharing, transferring, reusing. So we see that most of them would go, okay, still a small number, but that's the reference we have in what they are worrying about. And that's the picture, right? So we reach it out to them. And that for me, I want to end it in here because it sparkles a lot of discussions as well. So what are the current status of KM? What's KM delivering as value for your organization right now? And what do you see as your perspective will be the future vision, what it's demanding? What are you guys demanding from KM in the future? So we hanged in this way. They could point it out what's the most important for them right now in terms of generating value with KM. So the current is presented in red on the front side, and what's in the future is presented in blue on the back. So it's really interesting for us to see that talent management and watching out for capabilities and competencies are main role. The three main topics still will be cost and consistency of their efforts and results and effectiveness. And they are already worrying, some of them in here are answering, the high level of services and the customer satisfaction. It's something they're worried. But when they reach out to the future, customers are coming to the front as well. So the impact of KM in our high level services and customers are reaching out. And this is a cross answer. So if I answer, well, I'm not worried about customer service or the level of quality of our service right now, but I will be worried about it more and more. That's something I want KM to help us generate value in the future. There's something they pointed out. Also, one other, I think, insight in here is that when they're coming to replicate knowledge and add on into new knowledge, into innovation, new areas, new horizons, I think in the future we can also sparkle the one number, but maybe it's sparkling us to watch out what's the value that knowledge management can also generate in terms of innovation and the future of the organization as well. I wanted to end it in here, but I think I'll ask Julia also if we can share in the chat for you guys the link for you to navigate. I think also on our Power BI, if you can see, it is online in English for you guys also to navigate. And it's an interactive Power BI, as you can see. So you will find full data uploaded. We can have, okay, again, Brazilian organizations, but that's a good insights for you. We have some of the professional answers in here. I think to add on Kendra, you can navigate to check like I mentioned, you can filter, and you will filter the information for the coming. This cross references, it's something everyone was asking us on the first editions. Like when we publish reports, they'll say, "But I want to cross the references and check on my specific industry, on our specific segment. How is it?" So I think it's nice that the Power BI allows us to do that. We'll deep dive in what's the role of the organization with all the data. It's probably small, but you can navigate it also. Okay, I could also help on that going full force. But I think what's something that I really like pointing it out, you can navigate, we're measuring also in deep information, like what kinds of methods, practices, and tools are those organizations using, for example? What are the KM practices they're using? And I really like to show you, for example, if you just filter for the advanced organizations, you get a sense of what are those advanced organizations really doing. And it sparkles like all the references we can get out of the information. So I'll stop in here so that we can at least have some interactions in our sessions, if I might, and I'll be back and open for questions and interactions.
Okay,
Thanks,
we have time
Amy.
for a couple of questions. So there's been some great comments coming in the chat area. So we'll take the time to read those. Any questions? Well, Thais, I will say that I'm happy. I like this information, and I also like that you're headed toward the value aspect of it, because the valuation of knowledge is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. Don't tell me it's doing something. Tell me the benefits I'm getting from it. So let's go to Yvette for a question.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I had a couple of thoughts, and it's always good to have a presentation where you actually start, your brain starts firing up in different directions. For me, one of the value that was missing was how it contributes to the organizational culture, because we are trying to build a learning culture, and I like the tangible benefits, but also there are some intangible value. I believe that with knowledge managers create belonging and trust, and sometimes borrow trust in communities of practice. So I really I wanted to ask, was this on purpose, that it was more towards like this problem solving innovation stuff, or culture just doesn't come up in these discussions?
Yeah, we did ask, I think, along our journey, Yvette, we did ask, like we had interactions with specialists, and we would publish reports into when they are deep diving in different topics, as culture, learning, and all these factors, even centralized KM with a team, or decentralizing, having multipliers as KM in different units. It's a constant discussion we have. So for the first reports, what we bring is data, and we'll bring the analysis on top of it with the specialists, with the group, with study group as well. And they will sparkle those provocations and those discussions as well. When we moved into the Power BI, we brought raw data, and first time represented into our SBGC KM last year, they would say, we want back all the insights, and we want qualitative information. So for next editions, I think learning from that lesson as well. The Power BI, it's important. The quantitative data will be published like constantly, but we need to go back into discussing the narrative, the lessons learned, and the stories behind each one of those organizations. So that's coming with the interview with the specialists and the managers, and let them bring the stories behind the data to complement. So not one or the other, but to complement, just to tackle on that. But definitely the cultural and the intrinsic indicators should be there in people's management as well, and cultural and so on.
Yeah, I think so, because that slide is really good. But if someone presented it to me and said, hey, these are going to be the benefits for AI implementation, it also fits.
Wonderful.
And we
Yes.
want to separate ourselves, and not separate like AI for KM and KM for AI, you know what I mean. But at the same time, we also want to be clear who we are in this whole dynamics. And when I saw there was, I mean, the Power BI is really amazing, like really, really world-class stuff. But, you know, when you were going through it, for instance, there was like a huge concentration of storytelling, which is not coming up in that slide. So that's why I'm saying that for me, this was a little bit surprising. And then there was also a slide about what are the most important topics for organizations in knowledge management, like recording knowledge and transmitting knowledge. And for me, the first two areas are pretty interlinked because now it's difficult because we don't see the slide, but
Okay.
transferring knowledge, like the first two areas about transferring knowledge and sharing the knowledge, it's kind of interlinked. And
Okay. Actually, we're going to have to close out now. This is wonderful and
sorry,
love the
sorry.
conversation. No
Thank
problem
you.
by that. This is really great, and we have had 3 wonderful presentations, and I thank both all 3, John, Kendra, and Thais, for your outstanding presentations. And I think we got quite a bit of questions. I wish we could go on talking, I bet, but because I'm with you on the intangibles. But I want to say thanks for those who have followed. We will be having additional things in the future, and I'm going to pass it back over to Moria so that she can close out and remind you of what else is coming.
We have 1 minute. I won't take your time. Register to our new course, and the next sharing session from Asia will be on March 27th. Thank you and have a great day.
Uh-oh, you
Oh, I
froze.
see we have 2 more minutes. Time to say goodbye for everyone.
Well, follow the KM Knowledge Management Global Network, and we'll have all the information available for you, okay? Thanks,
And
everyone,
we
and
will
have
share.
a wonderful day, and be safe out there.